Hello and welcome back to the Listening Lounge. I am, of course, Nick Day, CEO of 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤 Recruitment Group. And let's be honest, right now in the world, there is so much noise. It can be really hard to be heard. So I want you all just to take a moment, sit back, relax, and for the next 10 minutes, listen to an amazing speaker I've got on the show, Tina Clements, who's going to talk to us all about feedback, facilitation, listening, and really optimizing performance. So Tina, absolute delight to welcome you to the show. How are you feeling?
I am feeling fabulous, my friend, and I am so honored to be here. Thank you.
I'm super stoked to have you here. Of course, from the other side of the pond as well from us in the UK, but that doesn't mean the message doesn't work globally. We're going to be talking about today. Facilitation and feedback is universal, and it's something we need to get right if we really want to excel performance within our teams. Before we get into the nitty gritty, what I'd like to ask, just to crack on with really, is tell the listeners a little bit about your background, what's led you to your journey to this podcast today, and yeah, just frame it a little bit for our listeners.
Like most people, I feel, my journey was lucky and accidental. I was in learning and development my entire career, and a friend who was working in human resources said, "I'm leaving my role, you should go for it." And I said, "HR, you're out of your mind." And thank God I didn't listen to myself nor her, and I jumped in with both feet and just fell in love, just absolutely fell in love, and learned and made a million mistakes. And from there, I was asked to launch and run the Retail Performance Company, which is an HR services, training, learning, and development organization 8 years ago. So it was happenstance, luck, knowing the right people to support and encourage. And here we are today with you, my dear friend.
Well, it's been a really good journey, a great book as well. So we're going to have a link and talk about it a bit later on. But I'm going to dive in with quite an aggressive question. I don't mean it to be, but right off the back. So we're talking about feedback. Why do leaders not give feedback? Why are we scared to give it? Why don't we do that enough at the moment? Or is there even a problem? Am I imagining it? Is there an issue with a lack of feedback?
There is an issue. There's an absolute issue, because everyone needs feedback to thrive and shift and change. It's the equivalent of swimming a swim race. When you swim a race, you frequently have to head up, as it's called. You swim, and head up. Because I have swum a race and thought I won because I hit land, but it turns out I went in the wrong direction. So I won a race that nobody else was winning. In other words, you need to frequently put your head up and get feedback to ensure that you're headed in the right direction. And to answer your question directly, in my experience, the reason why leaders don't give feedback is because they're afraid. And they're afraid of conflict. So many humans are conflict adverse. So instead of putting themselves in perceived conflict by giving that feedback, because they don't want to look like the bad guy, whatever their motivation, they just don't give it. And they're giving such a disservice by not contributing and not giving that feedback. That's, in my experience, the number one reason why.
So do you think a lot of us as leaders automatically associate feedback then with a negative, as in we only do it to give negative news? Because from my perspective, you want to feedback positive and negative, right? And actually I love your kind of jump in with your swimming analogy. So I used to do a lot of open water swimming. And when you do, it's not just breathing, you need to sight as well, right? So feedback helps see where you're going if you're using that analogy. So why do we have that association with feedback being always negative?
It's a great point. It's experiential, right? That's what from a young age, our parents are, stop, no. I read somewhere a child hears the word no 82 times in a day between school and parents and whatnot. So it's kind of embedded in our DNA that's what it's about. But you make such an amazing point. Why can't feedback be positive as well? Hey, Sam, come here for a second. You got a second? I just want you to know the way you handled that client, really well done. Could you have done it any better? Would you change anything? Yeah, maybe next. You can always, if there is constructive, you can put it in there. But why are we not stopping and going, come here for a second? That's well. Keep that up. It's a great point. Really good point.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate now then with you. I adopt that approach. I go, all right, we've got leaders, and hey, Jesse, how could you have done that better? Great, cool. Should we be more conformist in the way that we give feedback? Should there be a timetable? Should we schedule it? When's the best time to give feedback?
Immediately. Wow, what a fabulous question. In the moment. And so I
don't do this. I'm jumping in, but I don't do this. So I might be making an error here. My always thinking is, if I do it immediately, sometimes your reaction's too, I use the word aggressive again, but sometimes you need to let it absorb. And I want to go, I'll sleep in that for 24 hours and I'll be more restrained, maybe I better give better feedback if I've had a chance to sit. That you reckon that could be holding you back? So I didn't mean to interrupt the question, but just I'm not doing what you said is a good thing. So I want to get better.
Guess who doesn't do it perfectly all the time either? Me. And I teach this. It's not easy, right? And I always am not a fan when one of my answers is, it depends, but in this case, it depends. Because if it's if you know that giving feedback in that moment will not be facilitated well, then don't do it. In other words, if you, and no one knows yourself better than you, right? So you have to, in that moment, check yourself. And that's the first step of giving feedback, is to ask yourself, why am I giving the feedback? If it's for me, because I've seen some leaders give feedback that almost blows out someone else's candles to make theirs shine brighter.
Okay.
That's not a motivation to give feedback. Yeah. Stop and say, okay, what's really going on here? So if you can in that moment, the first step is, hey, got a second? And first of all, if you're with a group or a team, bring that person away. You never want to have a conversation like this in front of anyone else. This is private and personal. But if you can in that moment, go, got a second? Come here. And then the next step would be, again, if you are controlled and you know it's about that person and your motivation is to help that guy elevate, stop and go, so do you know why I want to have a quick chat? 99 out of 100 times that person will know. Absolutely. Yeah, boss, it's because I could have done that. Yeah, so what do you think you could have done? You're not even giving feedback. You're giving that person the opportunity to give him or herself the feedback. And then you can direct from there. But wow, that was a long-winded way of saying, with immediacy, I hate the analogy, but it's if a dog poops on the carpet, you can't wait till to give
it's a
the
good
feedback.
Example there, you're right. There's no point doing
same.
it a day later. It doesn't know what it's been told off for, right? Or whatever it is.
Old school context, but it's definitely true.
Before we close the podcast, we're going to open the L&D Vault, something we do on every podcast where we talk a little bit about the things that we could change if we could. So question 1, short and sweet. In hindsight, what's one thing you know now that you wish you had known when you began your learning and development career?
Oh my God. The one thing is that it's okay to make mistakes. There's no such thing. There really is only discoveries, no mistakes, and to ask for help. That is the one thing that I wish I had. Yes, for sure.
Perfect. Question 2. What's the one common myth you often hear in the workplace in relation to leadership, and can you debunk it?
I have done it. I'm the best at it, so therefore I can lead it. And yes, that can be debunked, and we don't have the time to debunk it right now.
A whole nother podcast, Mike, maybe another time. Last question. What is the one piece of advice you would give to someone who was recently appointed to a leadership role but had no previous experience in leadership?
Prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. Meaning, don't go in there and start telling people what to do and start to just stop. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not have a clue and learn first and take things in and then bring people in to come up with the solutions on your own.
Tina, thank you so much for joining me today on the Listening Lounge. It's been an absolute pleasure. And remember, everyone, every good conversation starts with good listening. I'm Nick Day. Speak to you all soon.
Ciao.
Cheers.